Call the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights to order. Being Tuesday, April the 24th, 2007. Our agenda, as noted, is a review of the estimates 2007-2008 under the justice referred to this committee on February the 27th, 2007. Appearing before the committee, of course, and we appreciate the time the minister has set aside for the estimates today. He will be with us for 2 hours. Honourable Rob Nicholson, Minister of Justice. From the Justice Department, Mr. John Sims, Deputy Minister and Deputy Attorney General. And from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Brian Sanders, Acting Director of Public Prosecutions. Thank you, Minister, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to be back in front of you again. I'm pleased to see one of my colleagues from the Niagara Peninsula, now a member of this committee, Mr. Rick Dykstra, and it's nice to see him here, and I know of his dedication to justice issues, and I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, when any time I get up to speak, over the years I've learned that if you're going to start recognizing people in a crowd, that you should have the names written down in advance so you don't miss anyone. So I missed someone yesterday. I was at the National Victims Awareness Week Symposium in Ottawa, and when I got up to speak, to introduce the first federal ombudsman for victims of crime, I recognized, of course, my colleague Stockwell Day and Dean Allison, Laurie Hahn, and Ms. Jennings. I didn't see you in the audience, and I apologize. I actually noticed as I was walking off the podium, I did see you in the second or third row, and that's not something I would do. I would certainly acknowledge all my colleagues in the House of Commons, and again, or in the future, I'll revert to my usual procedure, which is always to write down the names of the people I'm going to acknowledge or not do it at all. In any case, I'm glad to see you here, and I'm glad that you were at the meeting yesterday. Il me fait plaisir de rencontrer les membres du Comité de la Justice.
I am pleased to meet the members of the Justice Committee to discuss the main spending estimates of the Department of Justice.
Joining me here today, and you introduced them, Mr. Chairman, of course. You would know, Mr. Chairman, as well as Minister of Justice and Attorney General, I have a portfolio that includes not only the Department of Justice, but also the Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Supreme Court of Canada. The Minister of Justice, of course, is also responsible for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, which was created last December by the Federal Accountability Act to enshrine in legislation the notion of prosecutorial independence. I'll speak more about that in a moment, but I want to first of all say that the work of the Department of Justice focuses on ensuring that Canada is a just and law-abiding society with an accessible, efficient and fair system of justice, and providing high-quality legal services and counsel to the government and to client departments and agencies, and promoting respect for the rule of law. Within this broad context, the Department has a specific priority to develop legislation and policy that address crime more effectively and increase the confidence of Canadians in the judicial system. Ultimately, this will promote safer communities for all Canadians and have a very real impact on their lives. Mr. Chairman, I am pleased with the progress that our government has made on the priorities of Canadians, particularly in the realm of tackling crime. My predecessor, Minister Toews, was placed in charge of an ambitious legislative agenda. And I have now taken on the challenge of this agenda, and I will continue to work diligently to guide that legislation through the House and, of course, work with this committee. One overarching priority has guided our government's work over the past 14 months, and that is safer communities for all Canadians. and part of that priority is tackling crime. Now, from the beginning of our mandate, we have been committed to stronger laws that deal with gangs, guns, and drugs, ensuring serious consequences for serious crimes, and ensuring that our communities are safe from crime. That commitment has not wavered. We also believe that Canada's justice system must adapt to the needs of the 21st century so that it can remain in step with changes in technology and increasingly sophisticated population. In these endeavours, I've been working closely with my colleague, the Minister of Public Safety, Stockwell Day, to deliver on that promise to tackle crime. We have introduced legislation on a number of fronts. For example, Bill C-35, which proposes to shift the onus to the person accused of serious gun crimes to explain why they should not be denied bail. And Bill C-18, which intends to strengthen our national DNA data bank and help our police forces identify the guilty and exonerate the innocent. I am pleased to say that with the support of all parties in the House, we brought into force Bill C-19, which creates new offences that target street racing specifically. These new offences recognize street racing for what it is, a reckless and dangerous act that too often kills. With our new legislation, people who treat our public streets as racetracks will be dealt with more seriously. We also passed legislation introduced by my colleague, the Minister of Finance, the Honourable Jim Flaherty, to strengthen the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Act. These changes will help ensure that Canada continues to be a global leader in combating organized crime and terrorist financing. We are also committed to better meeting the needs of victims of crime in areas where the federal government is responsible. Our government has listened and responded to victims of crime, giving them the respect they deserve. We have established the Office of the Federal Ombudsman for Victims of Crime, and just yesterday I was pleased to name Steve Sullivan to be the first federal ombudsman. This office will be an independent resource for victims who have concern about areas where the federal government is responsible, including the federal corrections system. Mr. Sullivan will work at arm's length from the government so that victims will be more confident that their views are being heard. We also recently provided $52 million in funding over the next 4 years to boost programs, services and funding for victims of crime, including enhancing financial assistance to victims to travel to sentencing hearings, to deliver victim impact statements, as well as to National Parole Board hearings. Increasing funding for services in the North, where rates of victimization are much higher than in the rest of Canada, and providing limited emergency financial assistance for Canadians who become victims of serious violent crimes while abroad. However, Mr. Chairman, the government also recognizes that it is equally important to prevent criminal behavior before it has a chance to take root. We are addressing the root causes of crime by supporting community and fundies with effective social programs and sound economic policies. In support of these goals, Budget 2007 commits $64 million over the next 2 years to create a national anti-drug strategy. This investment builds on ongoing annual funding for current programs and initiatives. This government is determined to sever these links by implementing a coherent, comprehensive national strategy against drugs. Although some details of the strategy remain to be worked out, I can say that it will focus on preventing drug use, treating drug addiction, and combating drug production and distribution. Together, these 3 action plans will form an integrated, focused, and balanced approach to reducing the supply and demand for illicit drugs, as well as the crime associated with it, leading to healthier individuals and safer communities. The strategy will address all illegal drugs, including marijuana, and will include a national awareness campaign aimed at young people. To succeed over the long term, I believe we must educate young people about the real risks associated with drug use, such as the dangers to mental and physical health, potential legal consequences, and impacts on career and travel options. It will also spur communities into action and engage local leaders in preventing the harm caused by illegal drugs. Our government is also providing $20 million over 2 years to support community-based programs that provide youth at risk with positive opportunities and help them make good choices. And we will continue to work with the provinces, municipalities, police, and community leaders in areas threatened by gun and gang violence to support programs which reach out to young people. We've also continued the Drug Treatment Court program, which is an important initiative of the Department of Justice. In conjunction with Health Canada, my department has been instrumental in expanding the concept of drug treatment courts beyond the initial pilot program in Toronto to several communities across Canada. Our government supports the use of drug treatment courts because they help reduce criminal behavior and drug use while holding offenders accountable for their actions. We've also made changes to improve and strengthen the justice system. Last November, my predecessor implemented changes to the judicial advisory committees. These changes have broadened the base of stakeholders who will contribute to this discussion and assessment of competence and excellence required for federally appointed judges. More specifically, we've included members of the law enforcement community, a community no less implicated in the administration of justice than lawyers and judges. These new members contribute another perspective on the competent and qualified individuals recommended to me for appointment to the bench. And we have moved expeditiously to fill vacancies in federal and provincial courts. To date, we have appointed 84 federal judges. I think this is an impressive record, given that the coming into force of Bill C-17 on December 14th, 2006 provided federally appointed judges with new options for electing supernumerary status, which created even more vacancies. However, I must emphasize that we will not sacrifice the quality of our appointments in the interest of speed. These appointments will continue to be based on merit and legal excellence. Additionally, in the interest of accountability, we have created the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and we have now begun the process of selecting a permanent director. Candidates will be assessed by a committee with representation from each political party, the senior public service, and the legal profession. As Attorney General, I'll make a choice from among 3 candidates, and that choice will be referred for approval to a committee of Parliament. By establishing this office as an entity separate from the Department of Justice, our government has made absolutely clear that criminal prosecutions are independent from political influence. I must clear up at this point 2 misconceptions. First of all, this action does not suggest that the government believes that federal prosecutors were unduly influenced in the past. As my predecessor, Minister Toews, has said, we are not here to correct a problem that has already occurred. We are here to prevent problems from arising in the future. Second, it's simply incorrect to state, as has been reported, that creating this office has cost the taxpayers an additional $98 million. The truth is that this figure represents the budget of the former Federal Prosecution Service, which was a division of the Department of Justice. After the transfer, the budget for the department decreased. The key driver in creating this office is to be as cost-neutral as possible, and it is, in fact, an investment that will benefit Canadians and increase their confidence in the justice system. Monsieur le Président, même si notre gouvernement a fait de grands pas dans
Mr. Chairman, although our government has been making great strides in improving our justice system, there is still a great deal left to accomplish.
Parliament, for which I am responsible as Minister of Justice and which I am committed to bringing into force. We introduced Bill C-9 to restrict the use of conditional sentences to ensure that people who commit serious crimes will serve their time behind bars, not in the community. We introduced C-10 to impose escalating mandatory minimum penalties for serious gun-related crimes. This legislation outlines clear consequences for gun crimes, prison sentences that are in keeping with the gravity of the offense. As I mentioned, C-10 seeks to increase the minimum penalty for gun crimes. This matter will soon be discussed in Parliament, and I hope that that bill will be restored to the way it was prior to being amended. Our legislative priorities also include C-27, which will ensure tougher sentences and more effective management of dangerous offenders, including imposing stricter conditions on repeat offenders to keep such criminals from offending again. C-27 responds to concerns that repeat and violent sexual predators are not being properly sentenced or managed once released into the community by strengthening the dangerous offender provisions and the Section 810.1 and 810.2 peace bond provisions of the Criminal Code. No one will be automatically designated a dangerous offender upon third conviction, and that's another misconception, Mr. Chairman, that I would like to clear up. Crown prosecutors may or may not elect to seek dangerous offender status. In those cases where the Crown elects to proceed, the offender will be given the opportunity to explain why they should not be designated as dangerous, and judges will determine whether the offender should be designated as a dangerous offender. We also are working to strengthen the laws against alcohol and drug-impaired driving. C-32 will ensure that drug-impaired drivers face similar testing to that which drunk drivers now face. It will give police better tools to detect and investigate drug and alcohol-impaired driving, and it will increase penalties. C-22, with this committee, which this committee recently considered and supported, will better protect youth against adult sexual predators, including against such predators on the Internet, by raising the age of sexual consent from 14 to 16 years. I believe there is a broad consensus among Canadians that raising the age of protection is the right thing to do. We know that it is strongly supported by many who work with youth or advocate on their behalf. And I know there's a great deal of support across different levels of government and indeed across the political spectrum. This law would also bring Canada in line with many other developed countries throughout the world. It's time to get serious in dealing with the crimes of adult sexual predators, and time to take a realistic and respectful approach to protecting our young people. But beyond the legislative agenda is our role as the lead department on the National Anti-Drug Strategy as announced in Budget 2007. The Department of Justice has traditionally had a role in supporting the development of drug policy and until recently played an integral part in the prosecution of drug offenses. It also has responsibility for the youth justice policy development, including the Youth Criminal Justice Act. As mentioned previously, along with preventing illicit drug use and treating dependency, this strategy will also crack down on gangs and combat illicit drug production, such as grow-ops and methamphetamine labs. I will work hard to ensure that the government's tackling crime agenda progresses through Parliament in my role as Justice Minister and Attorney General, so that we can all enjoy safer streets and more secure communities. Mr. Chairman, our government has done more than just promise to improve Canada's system of justice to create safer communities. We have backed it up with financial resources. I am pleased to note that Budget 2007 reflects the government's commitment to building safer communities and creating a better Canada. We have taken a leading we are cooperating on a number of initiatives. The new National Drug Strategy, which I've mentioned, we are committed to $64 million over the next 2 years to refocus current efforts on combating illicit drug use, manufacturing, as well as prevention and treatment. We renewed the Aboriginal Justice Strategy with funding of $14.5 million over 2 years. This will significantly increase the number of Aboriginal communities and people that have access to community justice programs. Under the strategy, Aboriginal communities will take greater responsibility for the administration of justice, leading to a further reduction in crime and positive impacts at the community level. We have allocated an additional $6 million per year to strengthen current activities on combating the sexual exploitation and trafficking of children, and to ensure that those who commit these heinous crimes are brought to justice. In addition, for the first time in more than 10 years, the provinces and territories will have stable and predictable funding for criminal legal aid. This approach will permit jurisdictions to develop long-term strategies to support the delivery of criminal legal aid. Budget 2007 takes important steps to prevent crime, as well as the precursors of crime, and to ensure that our corrections, intelligence, and security systems are strong. Finally, the government recently received the House of Commons Subcommittee and Special Senate Committee reports on the review of the Anti-Terrorism Act. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the members of both committees for their excellent work in tackling the numerous issues they were confronted with in the course of their review. Both committees addressed issues of great concern to the government, and we will consider these recommendations very carefully. En terminant, Monsieur le Président, je souhaite...
In closing, Mr. Chairman, I wish to thank you and your committee members for your important work. It is an honor for me to take part in this process as Canada's Minister of Justice.
Acutely aware that improving Canada's system of justice is a collaborative effort. Our system is a shared responsibility with the provinces and territories, and our many programs and initiatives require collaboration with our provincial and territorial partners, as well as municipalities and other government departments. Together, we will continue to work to ensure that Canada's system of justice contributes to the safety and security and well-being of Canadians. Thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to any questions or comments that you may have.
Well, thank you, Minister. That was a fairly lengthy report, actually. I, for one, am very pleased to hear of Mr. Steve Sullivan's appointment as the Ombudsman. I think that was a good pick. And I know that many of the members on this committee have had contact with Mr. Sullivan over the years. Questions? Questions? Ms. Jennings.
Merci beaucoup pour...
Thank you very much for your explanations on what happened yesterday morning. I appreciate that quite a bit, Minister. I have a few questions. In the report on plans and priorities, when we're looking at the Youth Criminal Justice Act, on page 15, you stated that you were preparing legislative reform options in order to strengthen this legislation. I would like to understand, for one, what the word strengthen means to you. It is recent legislation. It's only been in effect for 3 years. And generally, when you're looking at legislative reform options for this new legislation, it would be because you feel that there are weaknesses or that there may be points that could be improved. I would like to know what weaknesses you see in this legislation. I'd also like to know if the amount of crime committed by young people is on the rise in Canada, and if so, by how much, and what category of crimes are we talking about? Violent crimes, property crimes, etc. So that is one question. The second one has to do with having an accessible system, justice system. We have implemented a legal aid system like the provinces to help Canadians who may not have the means to be represented before the courts, specifically the criminal courts. but also civil courts and administrative courts. We know that there's an increasing number of litigants and accused that are not represented, that appear unrepresented before the courts. Also, on page 35 of your report on plans and priorities, we see $44.7 million for 2006-2007. That's a reduction in terms of the contributions to legal aid. Whereas on page 38, we see that the contributions to the provinces for legal aid will be reduced by $30 million in 2006-07. And on page 39, we see $40 million worth of spending for 2007-2008. So how much is the government spending on legal aid for 2007-2008? The federal government's spending, including the transfers and contributions to the provinces for the legal aid system that they themselves implemented. I would like to know whether that's an increase or a drop in comparison with the previous years. Thank you.
You had a lot there, Madam Jennings. So,
Well, you know the rules. You've been on committees before, Minister. If you can't answer all of them, you forward the answer in writing to the members through the chair.
I would be glad to do that for sure.
I'm sure you would.
You started off talking about the youth criminal justice system, and in particular, you made references to the Youth Criminal Justice Act. First of all, I'm not sure, my appearances before this committee, I've had much of an opportunity to talk about that. I, for one, believe in a separate law and a separate regime for dealing with young people. I think we have a greater opportunity to change the direction of a young person's life if we get at the problems that are causing that individual to commit crimes and giving that individual the support and the treatment that they need. So I have been a supporter of the various incarnations of laws that have come forward that deal specifically with young people. That being said, we indicated to Canadians in the last general election that we would bring about changes to the Youth Criminal Justice Act. And I can tell you that in the short period of time that I have been Minister of Justice, this is one of the areas most often raised with me between my either provincial counterparts or individuals involved with the criminal justice system, and that is this particular piece of legislation. And so I think it can and it should be improved. We are committed to do that. Now, we will introduce legislation in that regard. And as we have indicated as a political party in the last election, we indicated that we believed that deterrence and denunciation should be included in the principles when it comes to sentencing a young person. We are having a look as well at the penalty sections for youth who commit serious or violent or repeat offenses. So we're having a look at that. And I will bring that legislation forward in due course. We have a very busy legislative agenda, as you know, and I'd like to see progress made on the legislation that we have. You indicated, you talked as well about legal aid, and you...
Just one moment. Before you go to legal aid, could you answer my final question about the youth justice system, which is, are the rate of crimes or number of crimes being committed by youth in Canada on the rise? And if it is To what extent? And are they violent crimes? Are they crimes against property, etc.? Where are the increases, if there are increases? Thank you.
I don't have the statistics with me before you, Madam Jennings, but I will forward those on to the committee. And as you indicated in your opening comments to me, we will carefully look at all the questions or issues that are raised. I appreciate that 2 hours is somewhat confining for all the different issues that involve the criminal justice system, and so if there's any either we don't get to or any that need further elaboration, I would certainly be pleased to pass that on. And one of the items that you talked about was the subject of legal aid. And you quite correctly pointed out about on 3 different occasions various or different amounts. And it's the way the accounting is done in this city that between the supplementary estimates, between the estimates and the priorities and plannings of the government, it can be somewhat confusing to anyone have a look at it. But I can assure you that our funding for legal aid has not decreased, and that what we have done, and rather than as had been done in the past, there was a base funding and then there was supplemental funding. We've turned it all into what is known as base stable funding that the provinces can count on. So with respect to I think perhaps I've covered pretty well the areas, and I'm sure you'll remind me.
The actual amount?
Yes.
That for legal aid for 2007-2008, including the transfers to the provinces for their system, and whether this is an increase or a decrease with regards to previous years. Specific amount.
The amount is $560 million over the next 5 years for criminal legal aid, and for non-criminal legal aid, is $57 million. Over the next 5 years, correct.
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Something further? Monsieur Menard.
Oui. Alors, Monsieur le Ministre, bienvenue.
Thank you, Minister. Welcome. I have to express the fact that I am disappointed at Mr. Sullivan's appointment. This is the second important appointment that you've made, and these are unilingual Anglophones that have been appointed. Mr. Rashtang at the Supreme Court did not speak French. A number of ministers do not speak French. Unilingual Anglophones continue to be appointed. I think it's shameful, and I don't understand how that could not be taken into consideration. That said, that is not what I wanted to discuss with you today. I would like some written information from you. I'm not expecting you to answer. I understand this might be rather technical, but perhaps in writing you could explain to us the $12,274,000 for the Police Association for legislation changes, the Youth Criminal Justice Fund, etc. What's the purpose of that? How much money is in that fund, and who uses that fund? Second, in the department, we see that there have been increases in spending, $320 million. That could be positive if it means more services for people. Out of this $320 million in this progression in spending, $100 million will be for the Director of Public Prosecutions. Your predecessor, also an unilingual Anglophone, announced the establishment of the public prosecutions, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. All the offenses under the province's area of jurisdiction for the criminal offenses, although the federal government has its responsibilities, what will be the relationship between your position as Attorney General of Canada, responsible for prosecutions, and this new Director of Public Prosecutions? I would like you to generously explain to us in detail how this money will be spent beyond the appointment of this person, and hopefully we will have a bilingual person or candidates on that position, but what will this do in terms of the administration of justice? That's my first question. Second, some organizations are concerned. I know you're very much interested in an anti-drug strategy, a national drug strategy. I was sitting myself on a committee, and it was something that was struck by one of your former colleagues for the non-medicinal use of drugs. The $245 million for this that have been set aside for the strategy, out of that amount, 73% of it is for law enforcement. Do you get the sense that that is something that should be corrected, that we should be spending more on prevention? So the issue of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the National Drug Strategy, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Menard. Pour moi, je ne parle pas encore très bien, mais je...
I'm not yet speaking French very well, but I understand.
The importance of providing services in both official languages. I can let you know that with respect to Mr. Sullivan, that he is committed to proficiency in the French language, and that my understanding is that he will have the resources to improve what he does. I do know that he again, I can't analyze how much he speaks or understands, but there were some comments that he and I shared yesterday that at the symposium that Madam Jennings and a number of us were at. One individual spoke entirely in French, that he and I both compared notes to make sure that we understood what was being said. But that being said, he is committed to that proficiency, and I take note of the comments that you've made. You asked about the Youth Justice Services Program. This is an ongoing program that has been around since 1984. And it's been under various names, which actually might lead to a bit of the confusion if you're having a look at the estimates, trying to compare last year with this year. But because the previous program expired on March 31st of this year, we entered into a number of consultations with the provinces in Ontario to come up with a new agreement. And the new agreement will cover the next 5 years from April 1st of this year, or rather from a 5-year period from April 1st of last year to 2010, and it'll be at a cost of $177.3 million. And so we believe that by putting money, expending money, and working with the provinces to assist youth, that this is an excellent expenditure of funds. With respect to the Director of Public Prosecutions, one of the things that I wanted to make clear in my opening comments is that we didn't set up the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions because we believed there was a problem at the present time with respect to criminal prosecutions in this country. But that being said, we believe that in the overall best interests of the administration of justice, or with respect to the criminal code and related statutes, to have an independent office that would operate at arm's length, but still be responsible to the Minister of Justice. The Minister of Justice, as you quite correctly pointed out, would be ultimately responsible for that appointment. You may be aware that we will involve members of all political parties in terms of having input into who that individual will be. That being said, I think it's an idea whose time has come, and I'm pleased that Mr. Brian Saunders, who is with me now and is the acting Director of Public Prosecutions, and since you concluded your remarks and comments and questions with respect to that, I'd actually invite him if there's any comments that he would like to make, and that might give you further edification.
Je pense que vous avez posé des questions. C'est quoi l'argent?
I think you asked some questions also about the money we will be spending, what our activities will be as the Director of Public Prosecutions in the RPP we have the 4 commitments we've set out. We have 4 activities. The money has been transferred from Justice to us, and the first one is for prosecutions relating to drugs in criminal courts. You know that we are responsible in the Northern Territories, etc. For 2007-2008, the money that has been set aside for that is $99 million. The second major activities that our office is responsible for is for the protection of the environment, social and economic health, and that amount stands at $19 million for 2007-08. So these are prosecutions against certain federal legislation. The third activity has to do with safeguarding Canada's safety. The proceeds of crimes issue, terrorism financing, etc. That's $5 million. And fourth, is to create a fair system of your justice system, and that is the amount of money that we would have a lawyer. Essentially, you would be able to offer better training for certain police officers.
Stratégie, vous n'avez pas répondu sur la...
And the issue of strategy, you didn't answer that. 73% of the $245 million will be going to law enforcement agencies. That's of a concern to some people, some organizations. I know you're very concerned about drugs. I know some people in your cabinet are working very hard on this. How would you react to that statement that 73% of the budget is going to law enforcement agencies rather than prevention? Would you like to see a change to that?
Mr. Menard, one thing that you may have inadvertently indicated, you said that the main estimates show an increase of $320 million. Actually, that, pardon me? 320,000. Yeah, sorry, 320,000. In fact, that would be a decrease. And so it's not an increase, just so you know. And if you're asking me in general about the split between law enforcement agencies and other programs to prevent, it's always a balance that we try to strike to ensure that law enforcement individuals have the resources, and in our case, of course, the RCMP have the resources that they need, and that the Director of Public Prosecution has the resources that he needs in the prosecution of the offenses for which he is responsible. And so, again, we support programs and initiatives that try and prevent crime or to work with individuals. For instance, the Aboriginal Justice Strategy is a case in point. The reports, for instance, that I have received on that have worked very well in terms of reducing recidivism and working with getting people involved with individuals who have run afoul of the law. And it seems to me it's a good example where money and funds are being expended to assist individuals. So, again, that's the balance that everyone, and not just me, provincials, attorneys general across this country have to strike that balance. And I believe that we generally get it right, and that we're on the right track. So thank you for your comments.
Mr. Menard, Mr. Comartin.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Minister, and Mr. Sims, Mr. Saunders, for being here. The Chair and I have had various discussions about how we handle estimates, and I know we both share a common concern that we just don't have the resources to properly assess, not just at your department, Mr. Minister, but any other department that he and I have sat on committees for which we're responsible for the estimates. Is your department, and I'm going to ask your government as well, looked at any way of improving the way we as committee members and as members of Parliament handle the estimates so that it's a more effective, meaningful review?
As I was saying to Madam Jennings a few minutes ago, I can understand how it might be very difficult to go through.
Well, not difficult, it's impossible. I mean, I've sat, Mr. Minister, as you have. We've looked in our careers, our professional careers, at financial statements of small and large corporations, at agencies. But, when I'm supposed to, as an individual member of Parliament, do an analysis of this in some kind of meaningful way with limited staff and resources, it is impossible. And provincial levels of government do a much more meaningful review of estimates than we do at the federal level. So I'm just wondering, is the government looking at any way of improving our ability as individual members of Parliament, both in government and on the opposition side, to deal with these reports?
Mr. Sims has indicated to me that over the last 5 or 6 years he believes that, in fact, there has been some improvements in the presentation of these reports, and the Auditor General herself has flagged this on a number of occasions. It's a complicated business, and the Government of Canada has huge responsibilities and is involved in many, many areas of public life in this country. I guess and I indicated to one of your colleagues here today that if there is anything that in particular that is a problem, or we would be pleased to provide you with that information. We would get any details that you want. Is there a better way to do it? I'm not quite sure what that better way would be. I'm certainly open to pass on any suggestions that you might have. I think part of the complicated process is the whole question of supplementary estimates, that you get it in two parts, that in my preparation for coming before you today, I had to look at it very carefully. I had to ask a lot of questions as to where the money is in terms of a number of programs that I know we announced, and well, those are part of the estimates, and so I can see where anybody would find this very, very difficult. But what I can say to you is that if there are any areas or a lot of areas that you would like to have further information so that you can do your job, I appreciate the job that you do. This is a job that, quite frankly, is as old as the parliamentary system itself, going back quite literally hundreds of years. The scrutiny by members of Parliament of the funds that necessary to run the government, and so I appreciate that it's complicated, and I can appreciate it that it can be very confusing. But I can say to you that for any questions that you have, we will certainly do our very best to accommodate you. And I take note of your comments in the overall context, because, as I say, it's not easy for me, and I have responsibility for the department to make sure that all the funding is properly there.
Well, let me just go into a few specifics. In terms of the Director of Public Prosecutions, you indicated the budget now showing on the line item is $96 million a year, and that 96 or 98. But you didn't indicate. You said you wanted it to be cost neutral. Is it in fact? And let me put that in the context of I want to challenge you, Mr. Minister. That director is not an independent office in terms of its reporting function, its appointment, who can determine which prosecutions. All of that's reserved to the AG. But we also, you've not been able to identify any need for this. You're anticipating, which I suppose, being a strong proponent of prevention, I can anticipate that. But how much is it costing us for a need that's not at this point been established?
I indicated to you, or it's been indicated to you before, that we're making every effort to make sure that as close as possible it is cost neutral. Obviously, with setting up any new office and or regime, that there are costs associated with that. That being said, you asked with respect to the need for this, and we're not, the AG, as you quite correctly pointed out, is not completely divorced from this in terms of either the individual. There is still rights and responsibilities reserved to the Attorney General, but I'm of the opinion that it is a step in the right direction. And again, you quite correctly point out we're doing this for preventative purposes, and I think that's legitimate. And I have been careful to suggest that previous attorneys general did not abuse the responsibility that was given to them. But to the extent that we move these decisions and put some distance between the attorney general and the director of public prosecutions, I think it's a good move. I see, Mr. Saunders, do you have any comments on that as well? Sorry.
Has there an analysis been how much is the additional cost just for the creation of the department, that interim phase, and then on an ongoing basis, do we not know how much more it's going to cost?
Mr. Saunders?
Versus you just left it alone?
We've set out in the plans and priorities some of those additional costs. You'll see on page 21, we have under the heading adjustments, indication that under the Federal Accountability Action Plan, there were permanent transition costs of $7.8 million a year, and those will be ongoing, and they're to cover the cost of establishing a corporate services within the office of the department director. And there's a one-time transition cost of $15 million spread over 2 years, $10 million this year and $5 million in 2008-2009. And that's to cover the cost of relocating headquarters, developing some infrastructure, and other costs associated with setting up the new department. Now, with respect to those costs I've just mentioned, we have to go to make a Treasury Board submission and to access those monies and be back at the supplementary estimates.
We'll watch for them then. On terms of the $20 million for the community-based preventative, that's 10 over 2 years. Last year, your predecessor, and I have to say I'm not sure the answer came from him or from Mr. Day, was that at that point they still had not determined how the initial $10 million for the 2005-2006 period was going to be spent. Has in fact any of this money been spent in the first year, and is it scheduled to be spent in the second year for the second $20 million?
I'm sorry, Mr. Camartin, are you talking about the youth-based programs?
You used the term community-based. This was money that was specifically designated to go to agencies that were doing preventative work, community-based preventative work. It was one of your campaign promises in the 2000.
It's part of our Youth Justice Initiative, and I indicated to you that the agreements on that are stable funding, and I think I gave the amount to Madam Jennings of over the 5 years, beginning with last year, $177.3 million. And it has come under different names, but these programs, working with provincial attorneys general, are in place right now, and they will continue to. Do you have any further comment on that, Mr. Sim?
I think we're talking, Mr. Minister, of two different funds. At least in the budget last year, or the estimates last year, they were two. This was broken out as a separate figure.
We're just going to get the information from Mr. Kumar. We think there's two funds being talked about.
I think we'll be able to give you a few more details, Mr. Camartin. We have one of our individuals who is coming to the table right now, and should be able to cast a little more light on this.
She's got the numbers.
Is she coming now?
Yeah,
Being conscious of the time, can I jump quickly to the Law Commission?
Yes, by all means, go ahead, and we'll come back to that.
I thought it was kind of an interesting report, with the assumption being in the written report that they were going to continue to be funded, which of course didn't happen. Have you done anything, has your department done anything to replace the research and work that the Law Commission was doing? And if so, have you done any funding of that, and to what degree?
As you know, Mr. Camartin, the decision to cease funding to the Law Commission took place last year. We have no plans to reinstitute the Law Commission, just so you know. The Department of Justice continues, obviously, to research and its own internal research with respect to criminal justice issues. I can tell you that I know that research goes on across this country, certainly at law schools and individuals connected with the system at the provincial level, but we have no specific program that I'm either announcing now or have intentions to announce to have either some sort of outside research. We analyze very carefully, obviously, the issues that are before us. I'm provided with excellent advice by the Department of Justice that's well-researched, comprehensive, and it works very well in terms of the responsibilities that we have. So,
They're only human, Mr. Minister, and you don't have enough of them to take on that responsibility. Just one last question on the Children's Ombudsman. How did you determine the amount of 1.5? For instance, did you look at Ontario's Ombudsman and see what their budget was? I mean, I've been critical, as you know, that it's nowhere near adequate for the responsibility that person will have to carry on for the whole of this country. And I share Mr. Menard's concern over him being not being bilingual, Mr. Minister.
Well, thank you very much for that comment, but the budget that we have put in place for that individual comes from our own analysis, and we have had a look at what we think this individual will need, the resources. The budget allows him or her to, now in this case him, to hire 8 individuals to get the office going. It seems to me that we have to start somewhere. And it seems to me that what we have proposed for that individual and their office is a reasonable budget. You said 1.5 million isn't going to do the job. Obviously, first of all, I think it will, and I will watch it, of course, very carefully to make sure that individual has the resource and is able to do the job. So I say let's give it some time, and we can revisit these things. If I'd be the first one if the individual said we can't get the job done at the budget that has been presented to him, I would certainly have a look at that. But I fully expect that individual will be able to get the job done. I want as well to say I want that individual to be very focused on the mandate that he has, that his job is the issues that concern victims in this country. And so I don't want an expansion into a lot of different areas. It has to be focused on that. And I'm sure you share with me the concern for victims in this country. And I like the idea, and I've always liked the idea of having one person who has complete responsibility in that area, because for too long we have not done enough for victims who get caught up in the system. And so when things go wrong or there are emerging issues, I want to have one individual and one office. I believe the resources are there. The additional resources, as you would know, go to the Victims Fund, and I was very pleased to see that expanded and funds go into that program, because that helps the victims directly, the individuals who want to attend parole hearings or need support to get to a parole hearing, the individual, the Canadian who becomes a victim of crime overseas and for whatever reason can't afford or can't get home and needs assistance. These are major improvements. So in terms of the balance between the administration office of the Federal Ombudsman and the Crime Victims Fund, I wanted to see as much money as possible in the Crime Victims Fund, and a lesser amount, of course, on the bureaucracy. But again, I will watch them both very, very carefully, and I appreciate your comments on that.
Now, Mr. Cole-Martin, I know that Mr. Cole-Martin's question on the $20 million has not been answered at this point in time. If you could quickly respond to him, I'm going to move on to the next questioner. Time is moving on.
Can I address
Please
that?
do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, please do.
The $10 million that you referred to as part of it's over 2 years, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry. Yeah.
$10 million each year, and in fact has been spent. And these measures were specifically put in place to address questions of violence, gun involvement. And my colleague Stockwell Day, as you know, has made a number of announcements on this to have a fund available to do, among other things, reduce gang-related violence and gang participation, and so the money is being spent, and it's being spent over a period of 2 years. It's our budget. Our budget has it.
Okay. And then can I just, Mr. Minister, can we have the details of those? Is that
No question, no problem at all. We can
if you could
provide
pass that to
for
the
you.
committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Comartin. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister, for being here. I want to say right off the bat that your comments in the beginning certainly ring a lot of bells with me. The age of consent bill, which is close to becoming a reality, is something that I know the chairman and I have been here for 14 years, and we both have put this in as a private member's bill since '95, I believe we started this, and so it's good to see this coming to a conclusion, and I thank you for your emphasis of importance on that. Also, and with you, and highly hoping that C-10 will get some restoration of some sort. I know that during the campaign of the election in January, I felt that this was the right way to go, and I based that a lot on the debates that I had with my Liberal friends and my NDP friends during the campaign, that it seemed like that was exactly where everybody wanted to go. I didn't have any bloc opposition in my riding, but the Green Party was there, and they were quite excited about the direction that C-10 was taking, that kind of legislation, so I'm with you on that. But I want to congratulate you on your appointment of Mr. Sullivan for the Ombudsman. I've known Mr. Sullivan a long time. I realize that he's not bilingual, but I know that he has the heart and the soul for the job. And I think that's real key. And it'll overcome any barriers that may create a bit of a problem in terms of language. But I'm knowing the man as well as I do, I'm very confident that it was an excellent choice, and I'm looking forward to continue working with him. I'm going to go back to one scenario, and maybe you could give me some idea of how an ombudsman would be effective in that case. And I'm going back to when I first was elected. The very first group of victims that I worked with was a family where their 5-year-old daughter was kidnapped out of the backyard and later found in a dumpster, murdered and been raped. The perpetrator was found, arrested, and charged. During that period of time, he received legal aid. He also had access to psychologists, and later on a 30-day stay in an institution under the care of a psychiatrist. All kinds of services for the offender of this crime. In the meantime, when I visited the family, the siblings and the parents, I never saw a more devastated group of people. They had no access to psychologists, no professional medical help whatsoever, no access to any psychiatrist, and I believe that the parent, one of the parents, could have probably used it. It was a devastating effect on them, and yet there seemed to be no assistance. I immediately began my conversations with then the Justice Minister, Alan Rock, indicating that we needed something in place for victims where they could turn to. I feel that today, with the announcement of Steve Sullivan, that has now been really strengthened to the degree that I think it should be. And I would like for you to expand a little bit on the powers and the authority of the Ombudsman, what we can expect to a little greater extent, if you don't mind. And also, if you have any comment on one section which I think has always had a major impact on victims, and that is the faint hope clause, that when one of these perpetrators get out in 15 years after being sentenced to 25 to life, that it has a devastating impact on victims. And is there any hope that that is another private member's bill I've got in place, if I ever get my name drawn, to eliminate Section 745. So I think that what you have done has indicated a very strong care and concern for victims, and I appreciate that and I know that you've made the right choice with Steve Sullivan, and that he will overcome the barriers that Mr. Menard and Mr. Cromartin have indicated. And I'll just let you comment on what I've said.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. You've certainly covered a fairly wide range of interests and concerns in the justice system. You started off by talking about the age of consent, and I'm pleased that you did, and I know of your support and the support, generally support in Parliament for that particular legislation, because it addresses a problem that is long overdue, in my opinion, in solving. The idea that a 40-year-old can have sex with a 14-year-old in this country and claim there was consent or something is just plain wrong. And for these individuals who like to prey upon young children, we need to update the law, and that's part of the challenge that we all have as legislators, to be continuously looking at these laws and to make sure that they are updated. You talked as well about the mandatory, rather C-10, the bill that would provide mandatory minimum sentences for individuals who commit serious gun crimes. And of course, we in the government are very, very supportive of that, and the bill was amended quite extensively at the committee, and certainly I would like to see that restored, because what we are suggesting, in my opinion, is very reasonable, that an individual who commits a serious crime with a gun should be subject to a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years. I think that is reasonable, and I can tell you that in my discussions with Canadians, and I'm sure you heard the same thing in the last election, the Canadians themselves think this is reasonable, and it sends out the right message, quite frankly, to everyone involved, that society takes a very dim view of this type of crime. So I thank you for your support of that particular piece of legislation. You talked as well in your comments about the federal victims ombudsman, and I congratulate you and your like-minded colleagues who have made the rights and the concerns of victims a priority in your political career. And there has been progress, even in my lifetime or my career as a lawyer, victim impact statements. I mean, I believed then and I believe today that these were steps in the right directions. And there was work going on at the provincial level, of course, and they were a huge responsibility with respect to the administration of justice, that they are working with victims. And but I believe a lot more needs to be done, and I think the increase for instance, the Victims Fund that I talked about in my comments with Mr. Cromartin. I was told, for instance, when that a Canadian who becomes a victim of a crime in a foreign country, that what financial assistance there would be available to that individual if they could not afford or they were having trouble getting home. And all I was told is that they were entitled to get a 30-day loan. Well, that's not acceptable in terms of where we are going. And so one of the areas that I am pleased that have now been expanded upon as part of our effort to assist and support victims is to make that available. And so those are the kinds of things that we have done. With respect to the federal ombudsman for victims of crime, as I indicated again in my comments to Mr. Cromartin, I want that individual to focus exclusively on the issues that concern victims, that he is not to expand his role or his office to get into other even important areas. I want them to be completely focused on that. And some of the things that individual can do is raise with the government issues that he, for instance, believes are not being addressed in the present system. That would be within his mandate. If, for instance, there wasn't compliance with the existing law, law, he would look into those kinds of complaints. I gave the example, not at this committee, but elsewhere. For instance, if an individual who was the victim of a crime, for instance, is in a grocery store and they see the individual that has victimized them and they weren't notified that this individual is coming up for parole. That's the kind of complaint I would want the federal ombudsman for victims of crime to look into. Why isn't the law being complied with? How is it possible that this individual was released and the victim wasn't notified of that or wasn't given the opportunity? And in that regard, we've also expanded the availability of the Victims Fund for individuals to get kind of the support that they may need. You may have an individual, for instance, that is an invalid, that has a disability that makes it very difficult for them to attend a parole hearing, and it would be perfectly reasonable and is now possible that a support person could go with that individual and could make a request of the fund. And so, as you quite correctly pointed out, the federal Ombudsman for Victims of Crime is an important component of what we are doing, but there are other measures, and the Victims Fund is another one. And so, again, in answer to your question, the legislation that I will be bringing forward at the present time, it will be related to the Youth Criminal Justice Act. We will be announcing as well the National Anti-Drug Strategy, but that's on my legislative agenda for now. And quite frankly, my priority right now, Mr. Thompson, are the bills that are before Parliament right now. I mean, I indicated in my opening comments the ambitious legislative agenda of my predecessor, Mr. Taze, which was completely consistent with what we told the Canadian public, and I understandably would like to see progress on those. And so, that being said, I can see that we're making progress in a number of areas. I mean, I was at the Senate last Thursday, and again, I asked them, I said, please, let's move forward on C9, the conditional sentencing bill, that I would like to see it in law. So I'm doing my best in terms of encouraging and working with this committee, working with parliamentarians, working with senators to try and move that legislative agenda. And that certainly is my priority. It was the priority of my predecessor, and it is one of the priorities of this government. Our crime agenda is very important in terms of what we promised Canadians and where we want to take this country. It's and the Prime Minister and others continuously emphasize how vital we believe that is to the best interest of this country. So, again, thank you for your comments, and thank you to you and all your colleagues who have been pushing some of these ideas, quite frankly, for many years.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
745.
Pardon?
Did we want to comment on Section 745?
Section 745, Minister.
I indicated, too, that my legislative priority right now is the bills that are before Parliament, and my commitment is to the improvements in the Youth Criminal Justice Act and the National Anti-Drug Strategy.
Thank you, Minister. A couple of questions from the Chair. Noting the Drug Treatment Court funding program from 06-07 to 07-08 has diminished. We had the opportunity to examine the Drug Treatment Court program in this committee for several days. At that time, it was being expanded from, I believe, 2 courts to approximately 3, and approximately 3 additional ones. And I'm just wondering what the analysis would be on that.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Chair, we are not decreasing funding for those, and I'm glad that you've actually raised the issue of the drug treatment courts, because I think this is an excellent effort and a worthwhile initiative, and you touched on that in your comments. The idea that we can get people diverted, get them off drugs, and at the same time protect the public and is very, very worthwhile in pursuing. You would know, and I'm sure our colleagues here would know, that individuals who get addicted to drugs, that it is a very difficult process to get them off. And to get them in and out of the criminal justice system is not what we want to see happen. We don't want to see them coming back again and again. And so, as Minister of Justice and as one of your colleagues, that when I had an opportunity to have a look at what is being done, I can tell you I was quite impressed with it. And I'm impressed with it because it seems to me it's a positive initiative, that we're actually doing something that'll make an improvement so that we don't get these individuals back in court, because that helps everybody. The individual who's not back in wasting his life, getting caught up in the criminal justice system, that of course is a huge improvement. But it also helps the Canadian public that they don't get these individuals again and again. My colleague, in terms of the actual details of the funding, my colleague Mr. Sims will provide you with that when he gets that. So.
Okay.
But thank you.
And the the issue of the anti-drug strategy.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chairman, you know very well that our rules provide the recognition of members of the committee in asking questions.
Right.
The rules are very explicit. Occasionally, the chair will intervene to obtain a clarification of some nature. So it's unclear to me why you have inserted yourself into the round of questioning at this time. If you'd like to explain, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm going to, for the benefit of our rules, I'm going to object. You're at liberty to take whatever position you wish, but this looks like it's turning into a 5-10 minute round.
Yeah, thank you,
from the chair. Could you please explain yourself to the members?
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your intervention. A point of clarification on that particular point, since our committee did in fact examine both issues that I brought forward here, and and I felt necessary to get some clarification on it. But in light of your intervention, Mr. Lee, you can take the next line of questioning.
It worked.
It's quite possible my colleague Mr. Bagnall was, if that's the case, I'm happy to see Mr. Bagnall.
He is, but Mr. Bagnall, would you like to continue?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And thank you, Minister, for coming. It's always been in the recent Liberal crime prevention platforms to have more police officers. And so we applaud your effort to add 2,500 municipal police officers, but I'm having a hard time finding it in the budget. If you could just tell me where that is in the budget.
That would be in Mr. Day's budget. It wouldn't be part of the justice.
Or not.
Okay.
Last week didn't take it. Over 2 years.
Give you a chance to. I know you didn't. Excuse me. I know you didn't write your remarks, but just give you a chance to correct the records. You talked about the change to the judicial selection process would allow a broadening of the people that could provide input on judges. But as you know, that's not true. The minister can already, under the old system, choose, I believe it's up to 3 lay members. It could be of any, they could be all police officers. They could be from any segment of society. So there's really not a broadening of the people that could sit on those committees, because anyone can already sit on those committees. So I assume you'll agree with that clarification to your opening remarks.
I'm not sure I will agree with that attempt at clarification, Mr. Bagnall, and certainly I stand behind all the comments that I make before the committee. The addition of someone from the police is an additional voice on there. It's an increase in the number of individuals who will sit on those judicial advisory committees. And I think it is a good addition to that. You're quite correct. The Minister of Justice can appoint other individuals from other backgrounds, including police. You could have two individuals who have it. But having it formalized now that someone from the police community, law enforcement community, will be a member of that, provides an additional voice, more people on it, and I think, quite frankly, it's a system that will work and is working right now. And I say to individuals who don't want police officers to participate on this, give them a chance, and I think you'll be impressed by the results, because my experience, in my lifetime as a lawyer, I have believed that those involved with policing in this country are just as dedicated, just as determined to have a judicial system that works in this country and works well as anybody else. And that even includes lawyers and others. I find that their commitment, I have never doubted their commitment. And so when this announcement was made, I saw the value in that. So I think the judicial appointments process, I think, is working, and it's working well. And we are getting qualified, outstanding Canadians serving on Superior Court benches across this country. So,
well, we agreed with you. That's why we
that's
thought
not what you expect. Or I know I think I may have said what you expected, but it's perhaps not what you wanted to hear.
No, we agree with you. There's excellent judges, and that's why we didn't think the system needed to be changed, or, as you said, an extra member added to the minister's votes.
But you know, Mr. Bagnall, on that point, those judicial advisory committees, they have changed, and they over the years. I think there's been 5 changes. And again, when these, I remember then Justice Minister Raina Tishon discussing with the members of this committee, of which I was a member, trying to explain that, get some additional perspectives. That's what Mr. Natishan said at the time. Get some input outside of the Minister of Justice's office, and at the time it commended itself. That idea commended itself to the members of the committee, but that didn't mean it was written in stone. And I don't remember him saying, "Well, that's it. We've got these 5. We'll put 5 members on there, and that's it. It'll never be changed," or that this is some sort of a constitutional change. It wasn't intended to be that, and changes were made even by my own government a few years later, and in the government of which you were a member, I think they made several changes as well. I know they made several changes, so I think it's been an evolving process. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to get on to some other topics. It's just there's been dramatic criticism of those changes. Thank you. The department has indicated in writing that there's a large number, and under questioning, there's a large number of recommendations provided to you, research on the costs of these bills. There's obviously cost to the justice system of a number of the bills that you outlined in your opening remarks. And I'm just wondering if you would endeavor to, and of course we're all interested in that, this is a financial session, I'm just wondering if you would endeavor to provide to the committee the research that the department provided to you on the potential cost implications of the various bills that the department's bringing forward.
I'll let Mr. Sims speak on behalf of the department.
Perhaps if I might, Mr. Chair, the government appreciates that, in fact, there are costs related to the adoption of some of these legislative measures. Much of the impact will be felt by provinces and territories. As a result of that, there has been ongoing work in the Federal Provincial Territorial Forum to examine what the extent of that impact is. Recent efforts have been made to develop a common methodology that all jurisdictions can agree on to determine just what those costs are. At the June meeting of Deputy Ministers of the FPT jurisdictions, a report will be tabled that will explain the methodology that I hope by then will be a consensus model so that we can then begin to assess the costs. So that work is ongoing. There is an appreciation that the work needs to be done. I hope it'll be at an advanced stage by June.
Freeman.
Bonjour, Mr. Nicholson, Mr. Sims, Mr. Sanders.
Welcome, Mr. Nicholson, Mr. Sims, and Mr. Sanders. I have 3 questions for the Minister. The first has to do with cost recovery. Page 35 of the ERPP. The minister will be recovering some of the costs to provide legal services to government. On page 18.4 of the main estimates, we see that there would be $178 million recovered for the service for these services. Why has this approach been adopted by the Department of Justice? What will the administrative cost be to implement a cost recovery strategy? How much will client departments and agencies be charged for legal services provided by the Department of Justice? And will cost recovery discourage departments and agencies from seeking legal help, since the cost of that assistance will come out of their budgets? And is cost recovery a prudent means of avoiding potential legal problems? Also, is cost recovery more suited to private enterprise with multiple clients? Also, sometimes on page 23 of the report on plans and priorities for the Department of Justice indicates that operational demands sometimes necessitate using private sector counsel. How often did that happen? How were they chosen? And also, I'd like to ask about legal aid. The Department of Justice wants to create a fair system of justice which is accessible. We realize that the justice system is so expensive now that the average person, or the person who does not have financial means, these people end up being unrepresented oftentimes, and this has an adverse effect on the proper administration of justice. In the breakdown of legal aid costs, what is the breakdown between the federal and provincial governments, and what should the province of Quebec receive? So if you can answer these questions, I'd much appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll go first, Madam Freeman, with legal aid and some of your other comments about cost recovery. I'll ask Mr. Sims. I'll provide you with the details of exactly how much the province of Quebec it will be receiving from legal aid. I agree with your comments that legal aid for individuals caught up in the criminal justice system are an important component of making the system work, and then when people do not have legal representation, that it actually is not cost effective in the sense that delays in courts and difficulties when proceeding with trials can result. This is a shared responsibility, and for the most part, most of the funding comes from the province, individual provinces, and it's administered by the provinces, and the money that comes from the federal government is a contribution to that. With respect to the specific amounts that each province gets, or in particular the province of Quebec, I would be pleased to get that for you, and I'll forward that on to you. Now, with respect to cost recovery, it is highlighted differently now in the budget, and you picked up on that. This is not something new that the Department of Justice charges other departments or other government agencies for the legal services that is provided. There are a number of reasons for that. There's nothing free in this world, and within the budgets of other departments, we want them to be careful in terms of the services that they demand. There's not unlimited, as there is in anything, there's not unlimited availability of any services for any department. So this is one way of ensuring that that costs are contained by showing the true, and indeed the true cost. Now, with respect to that, I know Mr. Sims has a couple of remarks that he would like to make, so I'll turn it over to him if you don't mind.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ms. Freeman. The figure for cost recovery appear for the first time in the documents this year, but this is not a new practice. The practice of recovering costs, in part, provides actually, this has been in existence for departments and agencies for a number of years. It's just a matter of how to reflect that in the documents that are before Parliament. We believe it is a system, as the Minister just pointed out, which reflects the sharing of roles and responsibilities of the Department of Justice, the client departments, and the central agencies like Treasury Board, Department of Finance, and others. So this is a system which works well. And if you have any more detailed questions, I'd be pleased to answer them, if I may. Did you get an answer to your question of...
L'année dernière,
the private counsel? Last year, in about 160 cases, we did use private sector counsel, and there was a policy that we follow in this regard as to the type of files that where we should turn to agents of the to private sector counsel. Generally, this is an area under the Minister of Justice's responsibility. In some cases, it might not be possible. Sometimes it could be an issue not so much of conflict, but of someone having a specific expertise which the minister may not have in a given area. And sometimes it could be for geographical reasons. We may not have a given lawyer in a region where we need the services. I'm referring to the civil side, not so much the criminal side, which is under Mr. Saunders' within his purview. Could you give us a few more examples? I'd like to understand what kind of issue are you dealing with? These private sector counsel, is this for specific cases, specific areas of law, or are you talking about from a geographical and area standpoint? Could you give us some examples on the civil side where you really have to hire the private sector counsel? Some concrete examples. Generally, on the civil side, it would be the major cases where you're looking at amounts that are quite considerable. Significant amounts of money are involved. I think I have some colleagues in the room that could certainly give you a few names while I answer other questions. On the criminal side, do you deal with the private sector clients? Do you deal with the private sector as well? Yes. Do you have some cases? Could you give us some examples? No, but I could explain the circumstances within which we might hire private sector counsel, slightly different from justice. We have 16 regional offices throughout the country, and there are over 700 counsel that work for us. How do you choose them, these counsel? Based on what criteria? We have a system that we use. It's always the same to hire someone. We will make an announcement or advertise in a part of Canada with, say, we don't have a lawyer. We'll advertise in the local paper. And then with the candidates, we do the same thing that we would do to assess a lawyer who would be working for us full-time. It's exactly the same system that we would use.
I know that, I'm sorry, I know, Mr. Sims, you have one short comment to make. If you would make that, please, and we'll go to Mr. Petit.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to give quelques exemples de cas.
A few examples of cases, Ms. Freeman. In the case, the maritime helicopters case, it's a major commercial contract. We we retain the services of private sector counsel. Surplus pension, I'm not sure what the name for that would be in French, but that is a case before the courts today. And Victor Buffalo is in the prairies. That's relate.
Encore immense, et on se servit.
Oil and gas revenues for an Aboriginal band, and then of course we had to retain legal counsel.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for your answers. Welcome, Minister. Good morning. There's one question which matters greatly to me, and this is one of the reasons why I joined the party. The victims ombudsman, the ombudsman for victims of crime. I've been working as a lawyer for 34 years. At the federal level, that position did not exist. It is something that our party created, this position, and I'm also proud of the fact that this week happens to be the National Week specifically for victims of crime, and this is not just an announcement, this is actually something that we believe in. This is a very new idea. Not only have we done everything we can to create harsher, more stringent laws, but also we're doing something to protect the victims. In my province, when you have victims of serious assault or crime, oftentimes these victims of crime do not get the support they need. How did you arrive at this solution, and what can be said about this new position of ombudsman?
Well, thank you very much, and Mr. Petit, and well, we certainly listened to individuals like yourself in answer to your final question as to how did we arrive at this, and you heard Mr. Thompson earlier today talk about his long-standing concern for victims in this country, and so it certainly evolved from the concerns of members like yourself and Mr. Thompson and others who believe that there should be one central office, one individual at the federal level responsible for victims in this country. There are offices and individuals and special interest groups and lobbyists for every cause on earth. And to have in Ottawa someone whose total responsibility is with respect to the issues that involve victims is an idea whose time has come. And you quite correctly pointed out that this is National Victims Awareness Week. And we, of course, in the government support that. We want to highlight those issues that concern people who find themselves as innocent victims caught up in the criminal justice system. And one of the interesting things about this, and you and others have pointed out, that those individuals are victims. It's not a one-time thing. It's not like a crime. I mean, somebody talked to me yesterday about an incident that where a woman was kidnapped and held for a period of approximately, I think, 2 or 3 days, they indicated to me. And then when she was finally released, the paper pointed out that she was released unhurt. Well, she was hurt. And just because you don't see, scars or broken bones or the obvious signs of pain inflicted on individuals doesn't mean that they don't suffer. And by having a National Victims Awareness Week, by appointing a victims ombudsman, by putting more money into a victims fund, and working with all other agencies and individuals who have a concern for this, is all moving in the right direction to assist people who, through no fault of their own, are victims. So I think that is what should be remembered, that their pain, their suffering continues, that they are hurt when they are victims of crime. And so, as you quite properly pointed out, this has been a passion of yours. In your 34 years as a lawyer, you would have come in contact with many victims if you practiced in the criminal justice area. So you know the need is there, and I'm impressed by the fact that you let your name stand, and that you have taken your principles and helped make initiatives like this possible. And so I can tell you, I join with everyone who is your colleagues and members of the government, that we appreciate your support on this initiative, because, as you know, This was one of the things that we talked about in the last election. We said we wanted to have something like this. And I was in a discussion earlier with Mr. Comartin. Is the budget enough? I certainly think it's enough for that individual to, in this case now Mr. Sullivan, to set up his office. But of course I will watch it very carefully to make sure that those resources are there, because we want this to work. And that's the most important thing. But again, in terms of the funding, as I pointed out to this committee, I am I'm as pleased as well about money that goes into the Victims Fund as well to assist in some of the areas that I pointed out. So again, Mr. Petit, I thank you for raising that issue, and I know that you will watch very carefully as Mr. Sullivan sets up his office and gets going in addressing some of the issues that are concerned of the victims across Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Petit. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got three questions. Mr. Minister, from the report on plans and priorities, it appears, it's not just doesn't appear, it is, it's a fact that the funding for the drug treatment courts is being reduced by about 25%. I'd like you to clarify that, and in the context of the anti-drug strategy, we've had drug strategies, anti-drug strategies around here for 20 years. What's different about yours? It's nice that we've got one, but you've spoken of it as though it's a refreshing change when, as I look at it, looking back 20 years, it's a continuation. Secondly, you referred to this fund for victims of crime abroad. And the way you spoke of it, I got the impression that if a Canadian were the victim of a crime abroad, for example, an assault, he or she loses their backpack, their suitcase, their briefcase in Gorky Park or in London's Hyde Park, they could apply and obtain a grant to come home. So I'd like you to clarify just what exactly is this Victims Fund that you've referred to and how it's going to operate. And thirdly, there is a steering committee on efficiency and access within the Justice Department. It's referred to in plans and priorities. I know you didn't wake up this morning thinking about that, but I know that your deputy will have.
Your questions, Mr. Lee.
And the plans and priorities report shows that the government is now reviewing recommendations of that committee on efficiencies and access. I'd like to know how you're doing and what some of the recommendations are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, in answer, and I can understand why there would be that misconception that the Government of Canada is spending less money on drug treatment courts. I indicated to Mr. Hanger that that is not the case, though I appreciate your analysis and your view of these. The reason is that the money is being shared as well by the Department of Health. There's obviously a very real health component to getting individuals off drugs, and a combination of the two between what is spent by the Department of Health and the Department of Justice means that not only is it's not decreasing, but in fact there is an increase in spending on drug treatment courts. But I appreciate, by looking at the Department of Justice estimates, that you might draw that conclusion. But again, I indicated I'm very much in support.
Okay, and I understand that. But you're saying the Department of Health federally is funding the drug treatment courts to fill up the shortfall and maybe even add a bit of money?
No, their programs are complementary. I mean, this is not just a court, as you would be aware. This is a court that combines treatment, and the other components of this are more properly within the Department of Health, and that's why they're there. You also asked for some clarification with respect to victims who find themselves abroad. This is in addition to the Victims Fund. There already is a fund, Mr. Lee, in place, and has been in place for years. For instance, I gave an example where an individual needs assistance getting to a parole hearing. We recognize that not everybody can afford to get to parole hearings, and so this Victims Fund assists them on that. The addition and the changes that we made to include individuals Canadians who find themselves victims overseas is this. an individual might have maybe the victim of a crime, and there's no problem with them either going about their business or getting back to Canada. But there are instances where there are true financial problems of getting an individual out of a country, and up to this point, that assistance was not available to them, other than the assistance of a 30-day loan that they might get from the consulate or the High Commission or the embassy. And it seems to me that an individual who is in a difficult situation and cannot afford to get home, that the ultimate solution is not a 30-day loan, but they would be able to get funding directly from that fund. So that fund is an expansion of the Victims Fund that is already in place. You talked about efficiencies. I'm going to ask Mr. Sims to comment on that, but I can tell you, for instance, one of the bills that you have before you is directed at increasing efficiencies within the criminal justice system, and that bill is C-23. And so there will be improvements and savings contained right within the bill that you have that we have before us in Parliament. With respect to any other details, Mr. Sims, if you'd like to comment.
Just before Mr. Sims provides all this additional information, could you clarify whether for the victims who are harmed abroad, victims of crime abroad,
yes,
who's going to run this fund, the Department of Justice or Foreign Affairs and International Trade?
I think it would be.
Well, it's your budget.
I believe
it appears to be your
within
budget,
the Department of Justice, but it would be administered. We, of course, need the assistance of our high commissions and our consulates abroad.
Mr. Sims, quickly, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a steering committee on justice efficiencies and access, which has been working at an FPT level, Mr. Lee. They've examined 3 big subjects so far, one on mega trials, one on management of cases going to trial, and another report on early case consideration. Those have been adopted by the FPT ministers and deputies. Work is now ongoing to decide how to implement those reports. That's ongoing now actively. New work has been directed to this committee, which, by the way, comprises judges, representatives from all jurisdictions, experts in the area. The new topic which is being addressed by the steering committee on justice efficiencies is 2 of them, jury reform and use of technology. So we see these as very practical work that actually drives to things that can be implemented and make changes in the system.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Mr. Dykstra.
Thank you. Yes, just a couple questions. One of the, in terms of number of programs, Victims of Crime, the Youth Justice Fund, Human Rights Commission, and Justice Partnership and Innovation. Some folks think that the way to identify the delivery of these programs is merely based upon the amount of money or the funds that you put towards them, and how much money is actually spent. Whereas others focus on quality of delivery, the delivery of the service itself, obviously the results of the program, to be able to determine whether or not you've actually accomplished what you set out to do and hit those deliverables. I was wondering, Minister, if you could comment on which aspect you believe in.
Well, perhaps a combination of them, Mr. Dykstra. And with respect to the programs that you've identified, our bottom line is we want them to work, and we want them to be effective. And we have an ongoing policy, of course, of having a look at what we are doing as a department, and we want to do whatever we do in a cost-effective way. We want to do it in an efficient way, and we want to do it in an effective way. We want these programs to work, and so I guess that's the bottom line, if I can use that term on these, that they have to do what they're supposed to do, and you've identified a number of different areas, and again, going back to one of the questions that I had, it's not strictly just law enforcement. That's not our total mandate. I mean, getting involved with youth, the Aboriginal justice strategy, things that help prevent crimes or help the individuals who have committed crimes are a priority for this government, and it's a priority with which I agree that people who don't get caught up in the justice system will lead a much more productive life, a satisfying life, and there will, quite frankly, be savings on that. People who aren't in and out of the criminal justice system aren't costing the system, aren't costing the taxpayers money. So it seems to me that it's a win-win situation for everyone involved when we reach out and try and help individuals.
Thank you. One of the other questions I had related to the support for the anti-terrorism and legal aid, with respect to legal aid, and I wondered, we make mention of it in the estimates in terms of the assistance for legal aid and the direction that it would take in that regard. I guess on a broader question, what are one of the things that happened in earlier in the year was a vote in the House of Commons where the portions of the Anti-Terrorism Act have actually been removed from it. And I wondered if you could comment on the impact of that based on the fact that we have it here in front of us under estimates, but it comes in a much different form than it originally did.
Well, as you probably know, I expressed my disappointment and the disappointment of the government that two provisions of the Anti-Terrorism Act were not extended. There was a sunset clause on two of those sections, and in a vote in Parliament, there was not a favorable vote to extend them. I supported them because they provide an additional tool for police officers. One of the things that we have to adapt within the justice system is to try and stay ahead of the individuals and the organizations that want to do harm to us. I remember experiencing, as a member of this committee, the challenges that the Internet brought about. I mean, we weren't, the law wasn't written, for the Internet, and it was incumbent upon us to try and stay ahead of technology and stay ahead of the individuals that would exploit or abuse or would commit crimes or would steal, and all the different ways. And so that, to me, was the challenge. And so I draw a parallel with that, with the Anti-Terrorism Act. Some individuals say, well, you didn't use that section, so therefore you get rid of it. It's actually not the approach that I think we should have. I think we should recognize that terrorism is a fact, that it's not going to disappear overnight, and that we have to be prepared. So we try and take advice from all sectors of society, but certainly in working with police across this country, when they say that these are some of the tools that we need, I can understand that, because I remember being told that we had to have make changes to the laws with respect to wiretap in view of a decision of the Supreme Court of Canada, in view of changes in technology, that we had to keep up with it. And it's not enough to say, well, you don't need these tools today, so therefore you shouldn't have them. I really don't believe is the approach. And so our challenge within the criminal code is to try and stay one step ahead of the bad guys, if that's possible. And if that's not possible, to make the changes so that we will have the tools in place to catch those individuals who would like to destroy society. So I thank you for your comments, and I know that you supported the extension of those anti-terrorism provisions, and quite frankly, I thank you for your commitment on the justice issues. I mentioned yesterday in response to a question from you that I know the question of victims and their rights has been important to you, and so I thank you as well for your support on that.
Thank you, Mr. Dykstra. Mr. Murphy, We haven't got much time, but one or two questions, short ones.
I'm sure that's your way of saying you're sorry for taking your time and clarifying, but
It isn't.
two brief and I know it wasn't. Two brief and trifling questions, perhaps, on the private sector aspect, the hiring of private sector counsel. Your Prime Minister made a very reckless promise during the campaign to have a full and open inquiry for the victims of Air India. He said that the inquiry would be open to all information, knowing, or he ought to have known, that much of the information would have national security implications, Mr. Minister. It seems to me outside counsel, which is a pretty expensive venture, has been fighting with the Department of Justice officials to get proper disclosure. Because Justice Major was given a very clear mandate that there would be full and open access. How much did that cost taxpayers, that to and from, the renvoi, the back and forth between Commission Counsel, very able Commission Counsel, and the Department of Justice? How much did that reckless promise of the Prime Minister cost? Secondly, on drug prosecutions, very briefly, you want to clamp down on crime. When you retain outside private sector counsel to enforce the drug laws, will you put them through the same rigorous examination of their belief in law and order that you are now putting judges through when you hire outside counsel?
I thought you said, Mr. Murphy, these were two trifling questions.
Well,
and then you...
I didn't mean that. I'm sorry for misleading the committee.
With respect to the Air India inquiry, actually, the responsibility for that Air India inquiry is my colleague, the Minister of Public Safety, Stockwell Day. But that being said, you should be aware that this government is committed to having as much information as possible to disclose to the public. And I disagree with your characterization of the comments of the Prime Minister in the previous campaign with respect to the Air India inquiry. This is an inquiry that is long overdue. I agreed completely with the Prime Minister when he said that we want to get some answers to some of these issues. And, you know, you've challenged me, I take it, with respect to the Prime Minister. The previous Prime Minister should have done this, or the previous two Prime Ministers should have done this. They should have moved forward on this at this particular time. So I don't accept your comments with respect to that. I welcomed the Air India inquiry, and I don't think it's just me. I mean, I think if you peruse the comments that have been made by individuals who were victims, again, it goes back to what we were talking about this week, victims. That's, you know, that horrific crime produced thousands of victims. So I agreed with what the Prime Minister had to do. And sorry,
the time actually is up, and
all right.
I know that you won't have time to get to this last point. Unfortunately, Mr. Murphy was the last on the line here, and time has gone. I would like to advise the committee that the Minister will not be available to appear on Bill C-23 this Thursday. The meeting will continue, of course, and we will give instructions to the analysts in reference to the report on judicial appointments. So the Minister won't be here Thursday. It'll be rescheduled. Motion for adjournment. Meeting adjourned.
come to the front if they would. And we'll get going in just a couple of minutes' time. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, main estimates 2007-2008, votes 1-5, L10 under Finance, Part 3, reports on plans and priorities renvoyés au comité le mardi.
Referred to the committee on Tuesday, February 27th, 2007.
This morning, we have officials from the Department of Finance, and I understand there's a brief opening presentation. Mr. Carney, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good day, Mr. Chair. My name is Mark Carney. I am the Senior Associate Deputy Minister at the Department of Finance. I have departmental officials with me today who are here to assist me in responding to your questions. We understand that the committee has met with other members of the finance portfolio, such as the Canadian International Trade Tribunal, Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, and the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, as well as with the Auditor General. Today's discussion focuses solely on the main estimates of the Department of Finance. As you are no doubt aware, the Department's responsibilities include preparing the federal budget, developing tax and tariff policy and legislation, managing federal borrowing on financial markets, administering major transfers of funds to provinces and territories, developing regulatory policy for the country's financial sector, and representing Canada in international financial institutions and fora.
The House identified total budgetary requirements for the Department of Finance